Okay, everybody, I'm back on the boat. Before we get started this episode, uh, I've got we've got Brian and Colin here, and Colin and I want to hear from Brian a little preview of his upcoming entry in the Mechanical Freak series. Uh, this week, a very controversial historical topic, which has been on a lot of minds lately. Brian has used his historical knowledge and aptitude for research to shed some light on the traditional ethnic thugs of the Russian Empire. Who are you going to call when you need a pogrom done? Brian, why is it okay, according to you, to be racist against the Cossacks?
Well, I can give you lots of historical reasons. They're the ones called out for pogroms to, instigate the pogroms. Their tendency to join various Nazi units when they had the chance. But I think the real reason is their torture of a very beloved character, one little mouse who had dreams of America. That's right. Ival from An American Tale, and he wanted to believe there were no cats in America, but unfortunately, there were still pigs. Welcome back to the Seattle Sucks podcast. Greg's on his boat.
I am on my boat.
Colin is in the nursery with his 25 children.
Mm-hmm.
Colin is part of the Quiverful movement, so just constant stream of children at his house.
Never ending.
I thought you were going to say constant stream of something else.
I'm trying to make the next Supreme Court justice, Brian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, joining weird Christian sects is the hottest new trend if you want to get on the federal judiciary.
Because, I was doing that job, and I'm back in town, and I've spent the last few days cutting a 40-gallon aluminum fuel tank out of the boat from a very tight space. And the new one is supposedly showing up in a few days, all the way from New Zealand. I'm gonna get it in, and that's gonna be that. Once I get that fuel tank back up, I'll have an engine again and my fireplace back, and I'll be able to clean up all these projects and put it away and tidy up, and finally, at long last, go back to brunch.
Hell yeah, that's just the dream right now, right? Everybody just wants to go back to brunch, and
I do.
Within weeks, maybe within a week of this podcast coming out, depending how lazy we are in getting it out, maybe the orange Cheeto man, the Cheeto in chief, will be gone, and we can all enjoy brunch again, just in public, large crowds, hanging out down on the hill, having brunch.
The thing about that is, I guess I'll only be able to have I'll be able to strike up the fireplace, get a little fire going, some nice sunlight coming in on my cleaned up kitchen. I'll be able to cook myself an omelet and sit and eat it with Jameson and La Cola at 10 a.m. by myself, of course, because we're COVID cases are spiking. So brunch, not all it's cracked up to be under COVID.
Oh man. Well, in today's podcast, we talked about it. We mentioned it in the intro, but it's going to be all Borat all the time. The new film just dropped. We're going to do the accent. We're going to say my wife and all that. So, leading off, let's just get our takes on the film. Borat 2, what'd you think, Colin?
I didn't see it, so it was great.
Oh, no, we didn't see it. No. I will tell you, the funniest part of the film is an unintentional bit of hilarity where Mike Pence, speaking in front of CPAC in February, has this whole speech where he's like, the United States only has 16 COVID cases in it. And we haven't had a new one in 2 weeks. So I think that we're past this, guys. We're doing great. One of the truly funniest fucking things in the movie.
Oh, yeah. What a beautiful time.
Simpler time. Yeah. When things were still almost good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's now 16 cases of COVID within the Mike Pence's office. Bazing. Doo-doo-ch. All right. Well, Borat aside, we are facing a different foreign invasion from Asia, a different menace, Asian menace. That is the the Asian
A
giant
black and
hornet.
yellow striped peril.
Yes,
It's
exactly. The
Chet
Asian
Hanks,
giant hornet.
everybody.
Yeah, and we'll have to post a link to this in the show notes. But somebody posted these pictures of who even is this? I assume NASA or something is the one capturing these
Yeah,
hornets.
they finally got
They're
ET.
wearing.
Dude, at long last. Dude, if anyone was having Halloween parties, like this would be the absolute winner this year at every one.
Oh yeah,
Like if you could cop one of these looks, one of these Hornet response unit fits, you'd take home the gold for sure.
yeah. I mean, like, in some of them, they don't even look real. I have this friend who has this weird hobby as a dad, is he builds model sets and then puts action figures on them and professionally lights them and shoots pictures of them. And this is literally what this looks like. It's so strange. It's so surreal.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, people should
Sounds
go
like a
look at
cool
these
guy.
pictures. Yeah, this is what happens when you have kids, right, Colin?
Exactly.
I've never heard of Colin having time for a hobby outside of this podcast, which you may have noticed he hasn't had a lot of time for over the last year.
Well, I guess the
Yeah.
difference is my friend's kids are well behaved.
Oh, maybe that makes all the difference. Daddy, can I help you with your model diorama today?
Well, we should probably begin the show for the fifth time now. We should probably begin the show with an apology as our traditional beginning. Me and Colin, we were left on our own to do a show last week. We haven't gotten all the numbers in yet. I hear so far it's the highest rated, most downloaded of all our shows. It's up for podcast Oscar. This is what I'm hearing. But in every bit of gold, there's always a little flake of dirt. And that is that we spoke too soon about our beloved former police chief, Carmen Best. And we had a lot of fun at her expense, laughing that she could only get a job at King 5. And that wasn't the case, was it, Greg?
No, you specifically, Brian, were like, ha ha, Greg thought she would go for MSNBC. And boom, that's what happened. Carmen Best, MSNBC, new analyst, announced shortly after the King 5 job. She was already appeared on the Today Show. Yeah, big news for Carmen Best.
Yeah. So yeah, she did a segment on Friday on the Today Show and is now an official MSNBC police contributor, which I think would right after she quit. I think me and you, Greg, both we jokingly said that she would probably speak at one of the conventions, but the base are like network news contributor, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be the next step.
Yeah. And I think our only disagreement was Fox or MSNBC.
Which, I mean, just so funny. I mean, MSNBC was the funniest possible place for her to go, and I'm glad that it worked out.
No, it's perfect because, as we said at the time, like, the choice is, like, lean in full MAGA, which she absolutely is. Like, 100% she is now already a second-time Trump voter, 100% certain of this. But the best use of her as a brand, and she knows that she's a PR person ultimately. Like, this is why we said this makes sense. This is how she came up in the department, is doing PR, and is as discordant and insane as this is. Like, it's the same as we've seen throughout all of this bizarre disconnect of our politics in this town that have manifested themselves in the sort of Black Lives Matter, defund the police movement. Is like, she's going to go on TV and be like, yeah, I am the progressive police chief from progressive Seattle who was, wrongfully chased out of town by an out of control leftist city council and a mob of communist BLM thugs.
I think too with after the debates and everything, the Biden administration giving every indication that they plan on going hard right during their administration. I think that she on MSNBC will provide plenty of cover for the hey, look, you gotta defeat that radical left, right? That's the problem. That's how you end up with people like Trump is by not moving right fast enough.
Look, it's why she was a successful spokesperson, PR flack for SPD. It's part of why she, people thought she would be an effective chief because she's a black woman who is a cop, and she gets to go on
Mm.
TV and play that, ID, use that ID to say, look, I speak, from this position of being a black woman from Seattle, no less, progressive Seattle, and I have this position that hey, cops are good actually, and and Antifa bad.
I mean, the interesting thing too is, like I said, she'll be protecting, Biden's sort of flank by attacking, left insurgent groups. But yeah, I think that identity thing is big, right? Dems will always play that. It's always that my one black friend says that actually police are cool. And she'll play it to the hill. I think one thing that's interesting too is, as we documented on this show fairly relentlessly, Carmen Best spent the last several months of her term or her being head of the Seattle Police Department, essentially lying every day, like telling bald faced lies to the media every day, ones that were easily proven as lies in the moment, like definitely not true. And again, we see what happens when you do that for the police, which is you just get promoted upwards. I'm
Yeah.
sure she's getting
Well,
paid
there was an
significantly.
audition. That was like an audition to that was her star turn. To now she's shown like she can, yeah, just bald. She has the tools at hand to just lie bald faced in service of the police state and protecting capital using the armed thugs of the state. And yeah, so perfect. That's exactly what they're looking for on cable news.
So there was two other things in the Seattle Times article about her new career as a famous anchor lady, or as a political consultant, which is that before she took this job for MSNBC, before she took the job at Cairo or whatever, or King 5, sorry, in October 2nd, she had signed on, and this is quoting the Seattle Times, she began working for a global private security company. Which it's only given that those just few words right there. That's all that ever comes up in the article. But I think this is actually the most fascinating
Oh
part of this
yeah.
article.
First
I
of
mean,
all,
who could it be?
there aren't that many truly global private security firms. I mean, she could be exaggerating, but I think it's fair to just guess that this is Blackwater. This is whatever Eric Prince's company is called now.
Yeah, and I mean, what it means too is that the Seattle solution to crowd control will just continue to also be exported, right? This time
Or
to
re-imported.
Yeah, and this time to mercenary armies who will attack civilians all over the world. But I mean, shouldn't it be a headline that police chief who is forced to retire because she brutalized not only the citizens of her city but also like city council members and stuff like that? Shouldn't it be a headline that she then goes and works for a private mercenary firm immediately afterwards? I mean, it seems newsworthy. It's very weird that it has zero coverage.
Well, I mean, it's just this is the water we're swimming in. Like, she's just a private citizen now out doing what they do, which is sell be like, soldiers of fortune in a corporate environment. I don't know.
Congratulations to Carmen Best for getting a sweet media gig, pretty much a no work media gig, and also a sweet gig for a shadowy global cabal of mercenaries.
Which is probably also a no work type gig. Like,
Oh, sure.
again, her real background is PR. Like, she's probably gonna do the same shit for Eric Prince as she's gonna do for MSNBC, which is, lightly consult and say things, appear in person in photographs with a name on shit. to endorse whatever bullshit or like in investor prospectuses and shit like that.
Well, basically, what will happen is once Biden gets into office and they launch a successful coup in Bolivia, and Blackwater is sent down to run the extermination camps for like the indigenous population of Bolivia.
Mm-hmm.
Carmen Best will be like the spokesperson for the Blackwater camps, right? And she'll be the one reassuring everybody that no, this is good actually. So again, congrats, and look forward to hearing and seeing her again in the future. But along with our congratulations to Carmen Bess comes also a sad a sad note, which is immediately after acknowledging that she now works for a global private security company. It did acknowledge that a few days after she got that job, she divorced her husband Larry. So condolences to Carmen Best as well. Relationships are tough. By the way, I had a friend who, or actually our show lawyer, who endorses everything we say. She looks out for the legal ramifications and personally endorses everything we say.
Mm-hmm.
Did point out in a text message that when people went to her house in Snohomish County, there was a question of why she wasn't at her residence in Seattle, and she said that there was a personal issue why she was out in the county residence and not in the city residence. And I think we found the answer here. Her and Larry couldn't make it work. Hey, I've been there before, bud. It's tough. Larry, I hope you get back on your feet. Carmen, I hope the $1 million or so you have coming to you this year in gigs. I hope that cushions your blow a little bit.
Larry, there's always more pigs in the pen.
Right when his meal ticket comes in.
Yeah, seriously. She didn't want to split any of the real checks about to come in.
Oh, well. That wasn't the only police news that we had coming. We also we have a couple King County sheriff amendments on the ballot as well. You hear about this, Greg? You hear about these amendments?
I definitely heard about this. Well, there's an election coming up is really the big news, right?
You don't say. When is it?
I don't know. It's a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, something. I don't know. I assume my ballot will show up eventually.
Have you not gotten your ballot yet?
No, I have. I turned it in even to the drop box right across the street from my house. I did not. I left a very important race blank. That's right, everybody. I did not vote for Jay Inslee. Fuck that guy.
Everybody who listens to our show knows that we're full Lauren Culp endorsers.
Oh hell yeah!
Just for the sake of our brand.
Yeah, no, I just left that blank. Yeah, but there's like, not surprising that like the presidential election is sort of overshadowing everything, and I haven't heard much about two of the most interesting. Like, we've talked about some of the other races that are going on that are interesting. We've talked about Sheree for state. We had Sheree on. I was out again Saturday, knocking the floating houses on East Lake, trespassing, defying the many signs that encourage one to respect the privacy of the floating house docks. But in addition, Gurmai Zalahai authored these ballot measures for King County that are pretty exciting, that make King County Sheriff an appointed position. It is, of course, like most sheriffs, elected. And they're the second one that clarifies that. I mean, it's sort of, I don't know why it's two. In fact, it's gonna be kind of weird if one passes and the other doesn't. But gives the power of the sheriff, which is to set policy at the sheriff's department, basically, to the executive and the council. So, which is really good. It's a good thing. We've talked about this before. Brian, you've written at Mechanical Freak about sheriffs and how fucking what like the freak, like all-time freak cops they are, how the institution of the sheriff as an elected office in America gives them this weird like power that other cops don't have, and a sense of power, an inflated sense of power and importance that other cops don't have. And the King County Council's trying to get rid of it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean this is in the wake of uh several, prominent shootings
Oh yeah.
from King County deputies. Um the Seattle Emerald, or the South Seattle Emerald, has been following a few of these cases, and it's an effort to try and rein the department, or put it under some sort of civilian oversight and control.
Right.
Now, of course, the history of the Seattle PD shouldn't fill us with a ton of hope
No. But
over this.
that's the thing.
But it is
It's not like a panacea, but
something.
it is one major barrier to
Mhm.
reform of any kind, or even the possibility of defunding the King County Sheriff at some point, is bringing it under normal, like, elected control of a normal elected body. And you don't need these wacky elected cops. You don't need elected cops. Do we want to just like read that KOW piece, because it's just sort of quote after quote that really kind of sums it all up?
So the title of this one is "Should the King County Sheriff be elected or appointed?"
This
That's
is
on the ballot.
KOW, yeah.
Yep, KUOW. Two proposed charter amendments on the ballot would make the King County Sheriff's Office more like a big city police department. Amendment 5 would allow the sheriff to be appointed by the executive and county council. Amendment 6 would allow the council to change the structure and duties of the sheriff's office. King County Council member Girmay Zahalai is an author of one of the amendments. He said the amendments respond to the widespread protests against systemic racism and police violence. What they've been asking us to do is move away from system of law enforcement that deploys armed police officers to respond to every situation, because that's how you end up with dead black and brown people, to put it frank. What people have been asking us to do is create something that looks more like a menu of public health and community-based alternatives. Zahalai said the council doesn't have the authority to create that menu, in quotes. The charter says the council cannot reduce or amend the duties of the sheriff's office.
So
If
this is the basic gist here. Like, Zahala is saying is, like, they're trying to respond to this movement in the streets, and basically they have no way to do that. Not that this is some panacea that's going to create the necessary change at the county level for King County Sheriff, but right now the only authority over, like, they're called the King County Sheriff because their jurisdiction is King County. They have nothing, basically nothing else to do with the King County government, because there is it's a whole separately elected fiefdom that therefore has this its own sort of democratic legitimacy and source of power. You have this sheriff who is elected, who is responsible for, singularly for everything. And it's easy to imagine that because it's elected, like, that makes it responsive, but what you have is, responsive to, like, public pressure. But of course that's not the case. In this case, there's just a cop in there, a longtime King County sheriff, and you can imagine running progressive candidates for sheriff, but it's a lot simpler and less I think it's there's a natural, like, whatever you succeed in, like, electorally, like electing like progressive sheriffs or something, there's always going to be like a natural drift that makes those people cops. Like, that person becomes a cop, even if you if you elect Hunter S. Thompson sheriff of uh whatever, wherever the fuck, in
You
Colorado,
should elect them sheriff of King County right now.
uh you know just because of the structure, that person becomes a cop.
Well,
um
yeah, because you're electing them literally to be a cop,
yeah.
whereas you elect your council members presumably to represent you in, like, civil affairs and county affairs. And what you're doing here by allowing the county to set the agenda for the police is you're taking it out of the hands of a cop. You're not allowing the sheriff unilateral control to set their own agenda.
Yeah,
But B, you're also saying that the sheriff's department is not sacrosanct and actually
exactly.
can be brought under civilian rule and can be altered under civilian rule, and maybe even gotten rid of under civilian rule,
Yeah.
right? That it's whereas if you just elect your own sort of sheriff or whatever, you're kind of wedding yourself to the sheriff department
Right.
concept.
Because it is therefore like enshrined with the basis of legitimacy in our entire like society in terms of governance, which is the democratic election.
Yeah,
So
it's also gonna be a lot easier to tell people to elect like good county officials than to tell them to elect like a non-cop to be the cop.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like it's a big political battle to get that done. And consistently, it's like it's anything else. In any struggle, you have to organize to take power and to keep it. But the structure of the elected cop doesn't makes that harder because of its very structure. It's an inherently right-wing idea. It's inherently authoritarian. Whereas you can have the same uh, electoral, responsiveness. You can have the same civilian elected. You can have elected oversight just by the elected governmental structures that exist. You don't need this mediation because ultimately you may succeed in getting like a socialist sheriff elected, but you could probably easier get a socialist city council elected, and you don't then have the problem of what they have the problem they're having right now that Zahala is trying to combat here is people are coming to the county and saying you need to do this, you need to change these things about the sheriff's department, and they're very legitimately saying, well, we can't, we have no authority there. And because uh Gurmai Zahala is there as of the last year, who's really awesome and is leading on this, they're trying to change that. But it's also the perfect, and the other Democrats on the council are backing it. The 6 out of the 9 people on the council. But it's also very easy in these kind of situations where you divide up responsibility for people to say, well, it's not us. And that is what that's what the executive that's what Constantine has said many times, said like, well, yeah, this is all well and good, blah blah blah, the King County Jail and the sheriff's department, but that's not actually me. It allows your elected officials to like pass the buck on to this other elected office that happens to be like an entrenched decades long cop.
If the amendments prevail, Zahalai said he'd seek input from the family members of Tommy Lay and others killed in encounters with sheriff's deputies on how to reshape the agency and choose its leadership. King County Sheriff Mitzi Johannecht was elected in 2017. Of Amendment 6, she said, plain and simple on that one, it is a mechanism to defund the King County Sheriff's Office and to dismantle the Sheriff's Office and to control the office of Sheriff itself.
Yep, that sounds about right. So she was elected in 2017 in a push by a bunch of people in the county to get rid of John Urquhart, the like absolutely loathsome scum pig, uh right-wing psycho who was in there before. And so, Pramila Jayapal and fucking Ron Sims, the previous county executive, and a bunch of other, progressives backed this West Seattle dwelling lesbian to be the sheriff. And okay, so I mean, but at the end of the day, this was someone who's been in the county sheriff's department. That was the entire to combat the vile John Urquhart. The entire like political imagination they had was to find uh, a lesbian sheriff deputy, a high-ranking sheriff deputy who'd been there for decades, in the King County Sheriff. Because that's it. That's who you make a sheriff. That's who's the sheriff. You need a sheriff deputy from in the department, and that's part of the fucking problem here. Of course, they'll probably just do that again when they do this. Like, again, this is not a panacea. They need to, as when they get the authority to do this, they need to abolish the office of the sheriff and change the name of the like King County law enforcement. I mean, it needs to be dismantled altogether. But like, there's a lot we could talk all the things they should do, and what they'll probably end up doing is appointing another current fucking King County sheriff deputy to be the King County sheriff. Hell, they might just appoint. This was their pick. This was like the progressive Seattle pick for sheriff. So what they might end up doing is just appointing her to be the sheriff, because this was the best they could find when they were looking for who's a high-ranking King County sheriff's deputy who we can bring in there, who's like more progressive and less of a psycho than John Urquhart. This is what they found. But at the end of the day, this woman is a cop. This was a decades-long cop. This is a pig who does not want anything in the sheriff's office to change. It wants more money, more fucking weapons. They're all the fucking same, just like fucking Carmen Best.
No, and that's the point that I sort of wanted to make, is that the appointment of, or the pushing of Johannecht was exactly the same as Carmen Best, which is King County Sheriff's Department was in the roiled in one of their just regular sort of PR crises where they had shot and killed this. They'd gone to Tommy Lee's apartment in Burien and like just instantly fucking shot him. Claimed he was menacing them with a knife, and it turned out all he had on him was a pen. And they were like, "Oh, but pens are like knives, you know." And so that happened in 2017, and I think in the summer of 2017, and this election came on the heels of that, and they're like, "Oh, we just got to get the problem with the sheriff's department is we don't have somebody with the right ID credentials to like go in," right? Which was exactly the Carmen Best situation, and a lot of people embarrassingly endorsed Carmen Best, just like, and thought things would be different, and then they embarrassingly endorsed Johannecht too. And the thing is what ended up happening, which I mean, again, I point to the South Seattle Emerald that's had just amazing coverage of this. But they just had, an investigative report that basically looked at the King County Sheriff's Office investigation of the shooting, and were like, they basically, Johannecht's office bent over backwards to basically say, "Nah, it was an okay shooting. No, nothing wrong happened here in the clear murder of this individual," right? So, yeah, I mean, cops are cops, right? And cops do what they do, which is defend other cops. And yeah, I mean, I wish that what Johannecht said here was true, which is that this was step one to defunding and then dismantling the sheriff's office. I doubt that it is.
Well, that's the thing. It is step one.
It should be used for.
It is the first step. I mean, other than actually just building power to do that, you are going to have to do this part at some point. And even if nothing else changes, this is still a good thing. Yeah. So
what I think. And I think too, one of the things that's to be highlighted in this fight, right, is that there is no right person to be the sheriff, right?
Exactly.
What needs to happen is the office needs to be brought under like strict civilian control, and there needs to be, the creation of penalties for these people, right?
Yeah. And ideally, if you're going to have a symbolic one person appointed to be the person responsible for the department, they should not be the sheriff, and they should not be in uniform, and they should never have been a cop. So, but good luck. That's not going to happen. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if they literally just appoint Johannecht, but who knows? But maybe because of what's happened over the last year in 2020, like maybe they'll have to move on from her and pick someone else similar who will be just as bad, but a new face that they can claim a fresh slate with. But whatever, in any case,
a new person to be surprised by when they turn out to be a giant piece of shit.
Johannecht said she has supported new programs to respond to emergency calls, like the Radar program, which funds mental health navigators to assist law enforcement. The program is in place in 5 cities and could be expanded to unincorporated King County in the proposed budget. In the wake of this summer's protests, Johannecht said she also used her authority to quickly commit to the 8 can't wait package of reforms for law enforcement, which include banning chokeholds or neck restraints.
Yep, that's the 8 can't wait. That's what electing a West Seattle lesbian sheriff gets you. The 8 can't wait. bullshit. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
fuck.
again, I mean, it's been endlessly clowned upon, but yeah, I mean, chokeholds have been banned by almost every major police department, and yet police
For
choke
like
people
30
to
years.
death. Yeah, and people choke police. Like, there's literally a famous case in the like early '80s where Daryl Gates in L.A. stood up in front of the press corps when they were like, "Hey, your cops just like choked another guy to death," and Daryl Gates is like, "Well, black people have a different musculature in their neck that causes them to just die when you touch them on the neck, so we really can't be blamed for that." Like, I mean, that's how old the chokehold like discussion has been.
Yeah.
And there's been bans in cities for decades on this, including New York City, where they choked a man famously to death on camera and nothing happened.
Well, and
So,
just
I mean,
just earlier this year, after the city council there officially banned it, not like in city ordinance, not just department
mhm.
policy, and the unions were like, yeah, haha, we're not going to do that, and the prosecutors were like, yeah, we were not going to prosecute a cop for doing that. So
Yeah.
cool,
So,
great stuff. The eight can't wait, real good. This is the Obama shit.
yeah,
Yeah,
very excited.
yeah.
It was the elected sheriff's ability to talk directly to the affected labor unions to solve this within a matter of days and make those adjustments to policy that I think are critical, she said.
Well, we
If the
discussed
sheriff
how like they're not critical, but also like if the council or whoever they put in charge is in charge, then they can also talk to those labor unions. So shut the fuck up.
No, you have to have a secret decoder ring that you only get when you become a sheriff.
Yeah, that's what Johannek is about to say. If the sheriff is no longer elected, Johannek said public accountability would be less clear.
Well, I mean, that's easy to look. That is the problem here. That is why this has to go away, because there's like that is ingrained in our idea of legitimacy of our social contract, is that, oh, this is a publicly elected person, so naturally they're very responsive to the needs of the community, blah blah blah, whatever, and legitimate in their power. And fuck that, it's nonsense. It confuses the issue. It makes it a inherently authoritarian thing, and the it will make much more clear the accountability of the council and the executive, because they won't be able to like say it's that guy over there. You'll be able to go to the government of the fucking county and say, what the fuck is going on with these cops, and they'll have to say, yeah, you're right, that is our problem.
Well, these like wildly competing and overlapping public offices. I mean, we've already seen like comically some of the problems when the sheriff for Snohomish County basically was like, masks are actually a Chinese conspiracy and nobody should wear them. And then county officials were saying, no, absolutely, like everybody needs to be wearing masks. We need to have like a mask ordinance. We talk about accountability. I mean, like, it's this game they play, right? Because then who's the public official there, right? The King County or the Snohomish County officials were elected, so was the sheriff, and here they are fighting over the dumbest fucking thing on the planet with the governor, who also was elected, right? So it's all just a giant jerk off session just to hide the fact
Right,
that the cops are afraid they're not going to get to play with all their guns in the way they used.
It's the county system and elected sheriffs. It's an extension of the sort of deliberate, like, hamstrung nature of our governance, like from federalism on down, that turns everything into like an unaccountable fiefdom, like medieval feudalism or the Third Reich.
Captain Stan CEO is the spokesman for the
Made
Save
up.
Our... What?
First off, that is a made up name. There is no Captain Stan CEO. All right. That wasn't that the Michael Jackson thing at Disneyland was Captain CEO? Wasn't that the ride?
Yeah.
It's a made up name, first off. I don't believe this person is real. Anyways, go on. Sorry, Colin.
No, it's okay. For the Save Our Sheriff campaign opposing the amendments, he calls getting rid of the elected sheriff a power grab by
Correct.
county officials.
You're correct, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is what it
Yeah.
is. Go fuck yourself.
When you have one person in charge of law enforcement or public safety and focused on that issue, you're going to get better service as opposed to having 10 individuals, 9 council persons, and an exec responsible for this, CO said.
No, you're going to get an entrenched cop mentality with power. You're going to get a cop who has an individual elected base of power. That's what you're going to get. Fuck that. Fuck off.
But I mean, presumably the King County Council would still like appoint somebody to be in charge of the department. I mean, you would still have somebody. It's not like the council would be like answering the 911 calls or something. You know,
Unless
like the council would be doing the paperwork. If only. But yeah, I mean, just a total misdirection, smoke and mirrors, or shit.
Changes to the sheriff's office would most directly affect unincorporated King County and the 12 cities that contract with the sheriff for their policing services.
well, I'm sure that's fucking true, but they don't mention in here that King County Sheriff deputies have been on the scene in Seattle throwing down against protesters. So
also running over protesters and shit, running into their cars and fucking murdering them. So, but yeah, the other part of it too is that, like, I mean, changes to the sheriff's office would most directly affect the areas the sheriff's office covers. Like, fucking brilliant. What a brilliant insight. Nobody in New York will be affected by this. You're very correct about that. That is a genius insight. Glad it made it into the report. I was worried my friend in Long Beach might be in trouble.
Well, I think, this is the reporter's like nice way of explaining to someone this is different than SPD.
4 of those cities have passed resolution opposing the amendments. King County Councilmember Kathy Lambert represents a big part of the county's unincorporated areas. She said her constituents want the ability to vote for the sheriff.
Councilmember Kathy Lambert, representative for Farrell King County.
What cemented it for me, Lambert said, was watching former Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best's speech, where she looked like she'd been socked in the stomach, and she said, "I did not make the decision to give away the East Precinct." And at that moment, I said, "I have made my decision. I never want anybody to be in a situation where, for political reasons, they make a decision that they know is not in the best interest of the citizens or the safety of the officers."
This is exactly why I wanted to read this piece, is because, like, that quote sums it up from that right-wing psycho Kathy Lambert, who represents, like, the Snoqualmie National Forest. This is the idea, is like, no, we need we need law enforcement to be totally independent. And you have this, look, this is how people think of all cops, that the chief should be totally empowered. This is basically what Jenny Durkin said about Carmen Best. Like, well, when that first, on May 30th, right, when they threw down the curfew, when they threw down that curfew, and 5 minutes before it was supposed to take effect, and Mayor Jenny's response when asked was like, well, we did that at the request of the police department. They thought it was the right thing to do. And that is how these right-wing authoritarian minds think of this. You need a totally independent, empowered law enforcement that can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. Okay. And we have, again, this is a double-edged thing. That means this is not going to be solved by this measure to do this, but it's a step, because even in SPD, right, they think of themselves, and the police chiefs do, and the cops think of themselves as totally independent from civilian control. We know that they've been totally out of control, but on the county level, it is much more entrenched than that. There isn't even a suggestion of civilian control. There isn't even the fantasy or the desire, and it's really dangerous for that reason. So, but that's how these people think.
Well, a coercive, violent power only works best when it's completely unaccountable.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy Lambert, I was curious, about this person. So I went to her King County Council person page, and one of the first posts on it is a video called Property Taxes 101. And if I could just read this short little section from it, it just says, this video will show you the percentage of taxes going to each government entity and the percentage of the total that is voter approved. I taped a short video with some basic information about your property taxes and how to find out more. So this is the person who Kathy Lambert is.
This is Kathy Lambert's two issues: property taxes and law enforcement and law and order.
Yeah, what a shock.
Police temporarily abandoned the precinct in response to protests on Capitol Hill over the summer. A former law enforcement official in King County who opposes the amendments said the current political climate is so polarized. It's been hard to have a substantive conversation. Don't
Hmm.
don't pay don't paint law enforcement in this region with this brush that we don't want innovation. Innovation. We don't want innovation, and we don't
It's a
want to.
cursed region, by the way. Nobody can talk about politics without saying innovation.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure dashboard is coming up at some point.
Yeah, innovation is the free square in the middle of the bingo card. And we don't want to have other ways of looking at policing, they said, adding, I think they'll defund the sheriff's office because right now the county is on the ropes fiscally.
So yeah, I mean, there it comes right back to taxes. Like, no, I mean, he's saying like, we're the change you've been waiting for. Oh yeah, we're progressive cops who want to, yeah, we want to innovate, and use apps to oppress people or some shit. I don't know, but yeah, this is pretty easy to figure out.
Well, and I think it is sort of interesting too, right? Where he just says, I think they'll defund the sheriff's office because right now the county is on the ropes fiscally, and it's like, yeah, they will. That also makes sense too. Like, if you're cutting the county budget, there's no reason why the police should be sacrosanct in any way.
Well,
But yeah,
when
all the same typical shit.
when people are in more, financial stress, when services are cut, there's often greater unrest, Brian. And so that right there, is enough reason to actually increase the budget of cops in a downturn. Some would say.
I will give the Everett mayor a lot of respect for just saying it as opposed to cowardly hiding behind it like all these other people do.
Yeah.
Supporters of the amendment say they don't believe the sheriff's office will make the innovation they're seeking on its own. The local WYCA has endorsed them. Calandra Childers is one of their board members. She said with an appointed sheriff, the county could do a nationwide search for the best talent. Holy
Fuck
fuck.
off.
That's the problem.
This is
right?
this
Not good enough talent.
No, this is so like this
Seattle
article is so
brainworms.
this who is this again? This is Amy Radel. This is this whole thing, like, this is, they let the guy get away with this, that previous statement, and the person they swing into for the opposing view is someone from the YWCA, who in like total lib brain, like cringe aneurysm, is like, yeah, we need to get a nationwide search for the best talent. I mean, fuck off. Like, again, I'll just keep saying this is not going to be any kind of panacea. It's no guarantee that any fewer black people are going to be murdered by the King County Sheriff. It is nonetheless a good thing, but this is just fucking embarrassing.
It will really allow us to expand the pool of candidates that are considered for the sheriff's position. Childers said the YWCA's mission includes supporting alternatives to incarceration, like murder. They offer a program that seeks to help victims of abuse who are themselves accused of a domestic violence related crime. The Survivors First program is a partnership between the YWCA and the King County Prosecuting Attorney, she said, and it connects survivor defendants to intervention services without criminal charges. Childers said if these amendments pass, that's the type of program the county council could expand. If the sheriff is appointed, Councilmember Zahalai said, I actually think responsiveness will go up. He said the public could bring concerns to the council at any time instead of just weighing in when the office is up for re-election. It's rare to have an appointed sheriff, but King County has experimented with both methods. The sheriff was elected until 1969. As Publicola explains, the county made the sheriff an appointed position from 1969 to 1996 in response to a corruption scandal. The King County Police Officers Guild then led the
Bingo.
successful campaign to make the sheriff an elected position once again.
So yeah,
Bring our corruption back.
This has been, again, like, this is no panacea. We've done this before. Like, they managed to get it into the council, into the King County government in 69, and in the bold tough on crime Democrat Clinton years, the King County Police Officers Guild managed to get the sheriff back on the ballot. So it's just one little thing, but it's still good. We don't need to read the rest. It's just like some sum up bullshit. But the other reason to talk about this is we've talked about before about the possibility, like it's been brought up, the possibility of like an elected civilian review board for SPD, and we've said before, I've said anyway, that that's a dumb idea. We shouldn't do that. I mean, no shade. Like it there's a ring to it. It makes sort of some basic sense, but you should think of that in terms of sheriffs, because that's what you've got is an elected cop, essentially, or an elected body of cops. Now, just as with a sheriff, you could elect a body of progressive, fucking communist, anti-cop defunders to a city police department civilian oversight board, or to a county sheriff as a county sheriff. Just like, some people are trying to elect a few progressive, quote unquote, prosecutors, um but you don't really get anything good out of that you don't get out of just having strong civilian control. um you you potentially get all this bad. It's this system that ultimately, like, even if you set up a civilian oversight board, um and again, your first round of people on it are like real progressives, which is going to be hard anyway. It's a lot of work you have to do that. And then who knows what it is 20 years down the road. You've just potentially just introduced a layer of insulation between your elected representatives and executive on the city or county level that lets them pass the buck. Potentially it's able to be like right wingified, and you start just electing actual cops who've served as cops because it makes sense and is natural, and it's an easy sell. It's all it is. It's more shit you have to run more people for. It's more electoral bullshit you have to do that can go good, it can go bad. So it's just like everything else. It's a political struggle that you have to constantly keep up, and that's always going to be the case. But you don't add anything by having by having elected cops. You add anything good. You add in this possibility, this natural sort of political structure that is essentially authoritarian, right? An elected cop, a cop empowered by the people who head specifically our law enforcement agencies, specifically empowered by democratic election. Whereas if you want civilian control, if you want strong accountability, all you need not turn any further than your already elected bodies. In Seattle, we have a city council that is elected and a mayor that is elected, and they should be fucking in charge, full stop, of Seattle Police Department. If they are not, and they clearly are not, then that's something that needs to be changed by them, by firing fucking cops, by firing the next 10 possible candidates within the department for chief, um, abolish the position of chief, and fire anyone who doesn't fucking take orders from whoever they appoint to run the shit. But it's not really, you already have that civilian control that you would imagine you're getting by an elected civilian control board, because
Well,
it worst case it turns into what the sheriffs have turned into, and best case you're not getting anything new.
yeah, your council members are already elected, right? So you don't need more. And to your point about the fact that it's just adding more elections now that you then have to go campaign for and stuff like that. In this final paragraph, it mentions the two funders of these sheriff's amendments for King County. The King County Police Officers Guild is funding the Save Our Sheriffs campaign, which would be no on the amendments, to the tune of $217,000. And then the Charter for Justice group, which is pushing yes on these amendments, is funding them to the tune of $5,700, right?
Yeah.
So the issue is, the more you spread out, we have to elect, this many more people and all this kind of stuff. It spreads out already scarce resources on the left. It also means that, what are you going to do? And we had to make choices, right? Do we go out and fund and defend reelecting, say, Shama Sawant, or do we spend time trying to elect people to this, like probably 7-person, police review board, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, it's a lot easier if all we have to do is just elect the goddamn council members to do their fucking job, as opposed to giving them a pass on it
And if you
saying,
want to
"No,
control,
we'll have 50 other elected positions."
if you want to control community control of the people who are appointed in there, it's the same recipe. You need to organize, to build power, to take power. And you can do, if community organization can get people elected to the council and the mayor's office, then and have the power to do that, then it can at the same time have the power to name those people. That's how this works. That's politics. So, but yeah, making it, we should be delegitimizing law enforcement and cops at every turn.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah,
control. Like, it's one thing to try and control them, and we do need to do that. But by having elected cops or elected cop direct oversight adds layers of legitimacy to cops as you try to control them. And you can control cops in ways and work toward taking power that controls cops in ways that does not add layers of legitimacy to them. And taking away, by the same token, taking away the elected office of sheriff will not necessarily actually mean democratic control of King County Sheriff, but it will take away a little bit of legitimacy. And that is something.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that's at least something, on your ballot that you can fill in and not just write in Jill Stein on. So there you go. All right, we'll close the show out there. I guess there's something to put on your ballot. I believe ballots are due by November 15th.
Yep, November 15th. Get them in. Please make sure you get them in
on
the
November
mail
15th.
by
That's
November
guaranteed.
15th.
Yeah,
if you
you
put it in
guarantee
before that, it could get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
They
And I
won't be
think you have
looking
to-
for them.
You have to personally hand it to your mail person, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to
But only on
personally,
November
face to
15th.
face.
Yeah, right.
They will not accept it prior to then. So only on November 15th, get your ballot in. Yeah,
that week. Look forward to that week. Something, November 12th or something. Our big election special.
Ooh, who are we going to endorse? Biden or Trump? You'll have to wait and see. November 13th. All right. Well, I think that'll do it. Should we say good night, boys?
Good night.
Good night, boys.